Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Today on the podcast, we are in Florida. We're with a high school champion, all-state, college, All-American Cross Country, track runner, later triathlete, many other things. Welcome on the podcast today, Andy Pheiff. Pfeiffer, hi, welcome today.
Hi, Matt.
Let's talk about the facts first before we get into some philosophy of competition. When did you first get involved in competitive sports?
Not counting Little League?
I can count Little League if you thought about it as a competitive sport.
Sure. Grew up watching baseball and stuff, so Little League, first thing that I kind of enjoyed. Wasn't really particularly good at it, but I enjoyed it.
Was that the era of trophy for everybody, or was competition much of a part of it?
I don't remember trophies for participation back then. I think you actually had to, quote, win something.
What happened for you to get involved in running? When did you first think I might be a skilled runner?
It's interesting. I'm probably one of the slowest people I know. So I think back to, even playing tag as a kid.
Right.
I couldn't catch anybody, so I had to keep chasing the same person until they got tired. My brother, who's 4 years older than me, ran cross country at our high school, and he was on the varsity team. I guess that was kind of part of it. And my dad wouldn't let us play football, so that's why I ran. And I think I ran a race when I was like in seventh grade, and I had never run a race, and I can't remember how long it was. It was a little bit cold. I do remember getting like seventh place and getting a little trophy with a foot on it, which was pretty cool. And then I remember my legs being numb for about a day.
Obviously, you didn't do any training for that.
No training. But I thought, boy, that wasn't bad for no training and just showing up. I probably ran out really fast and got tired.
What was the conversion then? What process did you go through to actually become serious about running?
I think the next year, eighth grade, you're not allowed to participate in high school sports. So I think I was a, quote, manager, equipment guy for the cross country team, and got to know the coach pretty well. Then the next year, the following year, freshman year, I went out for cross country and track.
What was your coach like?
He was awesome. He's still alive. He was at our last high school reunion, still holding court with all the runners. He was a good guy. He actually gave me a ride home every day after practice because I was on the way home. Art Guerreri, super guy. Pretty good coach, too, I thought.
When you were there as the equipment manager, did you look at any of the older runner students as role models or idols or something to aspire to? How did you relate to those actual team members?
Sure. The best guy on the team. You always wanted to be like the best guy on the team. So I thought, it was pretty cool. He was a pretty good runner. I think he was there one more year. My freshman year, he was the first man on the team. So yeah, he's your role model. Had a lot of high school records in track and certainly in cross country.
What about you getting onto track? Was track a natural sport to add to cross country?
For me, I don't know when I decided I like cross country a lot better than going around in circles. I certainly had an affinity for the mile. I loved the mile. I thought that was a glamour event that, the Jim Ryans were right before our time. And that was pretty cool. It's good in the mile in high school, but certainly not fast enough to be good at it in college.
Let's talk about your accomplishments in high school and the environment. What did you know about running? What did your coach know about coaching? And what equipment and facilities were you at that point? In Eastern Pennsylvania.
Eastern Pennsylvania. We had a track that wasn't an oval, so it was kind of went out and back and around. It was cinder track, obviously. So we trained in Converse pushers, just a flat shoe. At some point, we got spikes, I guess. I don't remember exactly when because the school didn't really supply anything. You had to buy your own equipment.
How'd you do, and how was your goal setting and aspirations forming?
I'm big on role models, so whether it was the best guy on our team or the best guys in Eastern Pennsylvania or whatever, so you always looked up to them. My transition was, I think my freshman year, I was on varsity, probably fourth man, 5 people score, obviously, in cross country. Sophomore, moved up to second man, and then the good guy graduated. Junior year in cross country, we did a lot, mostly dual meets. I think I won 8, lost 2 to kind of guys that were really good. Ended up doing well in the States, Mickey Collins. My senior year, I was undefeated. Basically set a record every time I ran in cross country, unless I waited for someone else to tie from my team. Won districts and just blew away the record. And that was a little depressing, having accomplished that goal, not having that goal. Really wasn't prepared for states. I think I got 20th in states, but guy on my team who hadn't beat me all year got 16th. So I knew I underperformed at the state meet.
What do you think about that now? Was the size of the meet overwhelming? How did it compare to your district?
I think part of it, we usually ran dual meets and usually at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and state meet was 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was really cold. And so I didn't have a lot of experience. So I like to go out fast and just not let anybody catch me. So I went out fast, and some people caught me, I guess. So it was a whole different feel to having that many people pass me after not for so long.
20th is all state in Pennsylvania, but you look at it now as a bit of a disappointment. How'd you feel then? Do you remember?
I really don't. I guess I felt kind of strange that a guy on my team beat me. Hadn't beat me all year, because even at district meet, I probably beat him by 15 seconds, which is a long way in a 2.5 mile race. I'm sure I was disappointed. I think I probably got over it quickly, though. I mean, didn't really give it much thought, and looking forward to the track season.
Different coach or same coach of the track team?
Same coach the whole time.
Your coach then, distance runner coach for cross country. How many coaches were on your track team? Did you have him dedicated for distance running?
No, he was the head track coach, and he worked with the runners, and I think they had a field coach that helped, with the field events.
Now you're on the track. You love the mile. It is the glamour event. Did you have competition within your team on that event?
No.
How did you get yourself up for every race? Undefeated, and then a little bit of a disappointment to state meet. In track, did you expect to win every mile, or was that something you weren't quite as dominant in?
I think I won every mile. The memory's a little hazy there, but I expected to win every mile. Back then, they just had started the 2 mile, and if you ran the 2 mile, you couldn't run anything else. So I basically ran the mile and the half mile, and if they needed someone to fill out the mile relay team, I filled that out.
And then final accomplishments at high school. How far did you progress?
Won the district meet. I went up to the 2 mile. I think I probably set a district record also. That's about 10 minutes for a 2 mile. Went to states. Same thing, a little disappointed. I think I got 7th or 8th, and there's no recognition for 7th or 8th. And it ran under 10 minutes by a bit, but felt like I could have done a lot better than that also.
Yeah, that's something we do. Even if you set a PR, sometimes think maybe I could have done better. At that point, lots of success. At what points did you think, I found my sport, forget baseball, forget basketball or anything else, I'm going to be a college athlete in this? At what point was it to be your junior year or before you thought this is something I'll be doing?
Probably before. I think early on, I thought this is something I could be good at. You think of making it a career. Back then, there wasn't any money as a career unless you were one of the top guys. Talking about role models, you had all those guys, Prefontaine, Shorter, Marty LaCory, all those great names that we had to look up to after it had been dominated so long by the Europeans. I thought I could make a career out of it, not only in college, but going forward.
Yeah, okay. Those early 70s and early mid-70s, there was a lot going on socially. Culture was maybe a strong inflection point, and running was coming into its own. Do you recall the recognition? What was your local press or the school paying attention to your accomplishments?
Yeah, I mean, they did, and which was interesting because the glamour sports, we had some good athletes, really dominated Eastern Pennsylvania, probably not considering Philadelphia area, but dominated Eastern Pennsylvania with wherever we went. So got good press in the local newspapers. The school made a pretty big deal of it. I remember my high school coach saying, if you can win the 2 mile at states, you have a chance for athlete of the year or something like that. Get good recognition. It was interesting.
You know, there's going to be running after high school in school. What was your college process for figuring out where you were going to go to school, and how much did running play a part in that?
I grew up right next to Lehigh University. The coach at Lehigh University had a running camp with the Poconos that I went to before my junior and senior year for a week. And we ran like 4 times a day. That's all we did: eat, run, and sleep. And I got to know him pretty good. And then my senior year, I think I won our league meet, which was held on his course, got even closer with him. And he wanted to recruit me and give me a scholarship. Being young and naive, I wanted to move away from home. So I turned him down. Indiana, Pennsylvania sent me a letter because I was in the top 20 in states, I suppose. That was my introduction. I'd never heard of the place or just went there. Obviously, no scholarships involved at that school, but I figured wherever I went, I could be successful.
After you decided on IUP, Indiana, Pennsylvania, what did you do for training on your own that summer before freshman year?
That's a great question. Being that I was such a superstar, I didn't feel like I needed to do that much training. And I assume everybody's the same way at that level. I just assumed that I would go there and be competitive and get in better shape and do really well.
So how'd that go?
I have to say, one of the funniest things is I met head track coach at that time who did the recruiting. And then when I got there, I met Ed Fry, who was a cross country coach. And everybody told me how good of a runner I was. And I thought that was kind of funny that old guy could beat us all. He wasn't really that old. He was probably 35 years old, but he could beat us all. I think we got there a week early to train. I remember being so sore I couldn't walk down the steps.
Yeah.
Really hurt. I remember, and I think one of my teammates who you had on here, I think we went on a 9-mile run, and when he and I got back, there was no one left in the locker room.
Dick Wolf?
Dick Wolf, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, then I got hurt my knee. Back then we didn't have orthopedic doctors. We just iced, and it really hurt for a while. And I really didn't know what it was, and I had to stop running. So I didn't really run my freshman year, either cross country or track.
You've got a long range vision that running is part of your future. How did you adjust to that? Both of those things.
Sometimes when bad things happen, they turn out to be good things. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of lost my way because running was always kind of my true north, the thing that helped me be disciplined. I never viewed it as work or anything like that. It was always just something I loved to do. What happened by maybe luck, maybe not luck. My sophomore year, I go back and I'm assigned a roommate, Jim Wooding. Right. And I don't know if that was a setup by the coach or what. I still wasn't running. And Jim talked me into running the intramural cross country meet. I think Vince Seltnick, the soccer coach, won it, but I think I got 3rd or 4th, won a pumpkin pie, which was very exciting. That started me back on running, where I had to start over. My knee healed itself, and I guess everything was good from there.
Then how long did it take you? So you still had a full 4 years of competition. So the next year was your redshirt freshman year, effectively. And how much did your teammates affect your motivation in terms of competition and in terms of support?
Although they were good friends that we like to hang out with and do stuff, I don't feel like I got running support. I mean, I was starting at the bottom, so it was my junior year in cross country, and there were certainly 10 or 15 guys better than me and trying to get in shape again. And that year was working as hard as I could, and I don't think I ever even made the top 7 that year.
But what was different about your summer, though, compared to after your freshman year, having seen the competition level of college?
So I still didn't do much in the summer. After my junior year, so before my first senior year and my second senior year, if you will, started to do more training. And before my last year, I took it very seriously and ran all summer. I ran with a couple of kids from our high school that were 4 years younger than me, and we just dominated Eastern Pennsylvania. We'd run over 100 miles a week. We would go to meets in East Stroudsburg and local municipal meets, and we'd never lose. We'd run 10 miles in the morning, and then we'd go run a race in the afternoon, and it was like magical.
These are summer races, so were they track or road?
East Stroudsburg was track, but a lot of them were public golf courses or something like that, municipal meets, if you will.
Did that summer, you think, make the difference where it really changed your level of competitiveness?
I think so. I think my first senior year, I a little hazy on the win. I think we got 4th in NAIA Cross Country in Parkside, Wisconsin, which was All-American designation. I think that was one where there was only 15 seconds between the first and the fifth guy, and I think I was the fifth guy on the team. It was pretty cool. Everybody ran well. And to get that designation, it's the first time a cross-country team got it. It was pretty neat.
Okay, when you got 5 people that close together, you're not going to always finish in the same order. How variable was it throughout the year of where you were in the pack?
I don't remember my junior year, but I assume I was kind of the fifth man, sixth man. And even my senior year, I got sick twice during the cross-country season, once early and once right before nationals. And I think that really hurt what I could have done because I started out the year in a tear. I think one time I was first man on the team, Penn, Ohio meet, which was pretty cool because it was a school record for the course that never was broken because course was changed. I don't know what happened that day, but it was a magical day to run like that.
Who were the people from outside of Indiana? Who were the superstars?
You know, for some reason, I didn't look at it like that. In high school, I knew all those guys. In college, I think because of where I was on the team, I was just trying to do the best I could relative to the team, trying to be second man or third man or first man, whatever the case may be. So I just show up at a meeting. That's what I will do. Edinburgh, my freshman year when I didn't run, they had a team, Jeff Foster, Kevin Foley, Henry Winger. I mean, that team was all world.
Yeah.
We couldn't compete against them on our best day, for sure. But I don't think they lasted long. They all kind of went different directions.
What do you remember then? You've got 1 or 2 times you were the first across the line. You're part of the pack. How did you assess how you were doing throughout the year then? Were you measuring it on team success at that point? Was that the best barometer you had?
Both. I mean, it was neat that we won the state meet. Have great memories of that. It was both. I remember the first cross-country meet, I think I was second or third man, and I really had high expectations after the training I had. And then I got sick, and then I fell back a little bit, and then came back, and then it was a process.
Get the track in a bit next, but did you have much opportunity to do indoor track across those years?
Very little. And I kind of liked indoor track. I remember it kind of hurt my lungs running inside for some reason, but I don't think I had a lot of success on indoor tracks.
The track meet, you have the affinity for the mile. What events did you go with, try, and then ultimately succeed in on the track?
I'm not sure I succeeded in anything. I guess I gravitated to the 5,000 or 10,000 meter. I tried the steeplechase. I don't have much of a jump, so that was interesting. And I don't know that I did anything noteworthy in those events. My last year after my senior cross-country year, I thought I would try the mile. I mean, I thought I would just kind of have fun, do the mile. And I have great memories of that year with the mile. It was 1,500 meter or whatever it was, the race at districts and states. You know, I always love to tell the story. It's that both of them were at Slippery Rock, and we got about 3/4 of a lap to go at the district meet, and I found myself in first place. And I thought, I'm going to take off. And I took off, and then, of course, you know, when the bear jumps on your back with about 100 yards to go, I kind of faded. The interesting thing, the following week, we had the state meet in the same track, and the same thing happened. I found myself right in front with 300 yards to go. And I said, I'm not going to go. I'm going to wait. And I waited, and I took off with like 100 yards to go. And I can't remember if I got third or fourth, but it certainly was a PR by a lot. I remember Coach Sutton coming over and saying, great job. It was something that totally wasn't expected. That was kind of a fun memory.
Cool. How much of a kick was your running style in that race usually then?
Again, I'm the slowest person on the track. I can go all out because it's as fast as I can go. So the kick, not much. What I was relying on is people were more tired than I like to go out fast and not let anybody catch me was the theory.
Let's talk about the coaches. Ed Fry, you had Ed Fry for all these years and all these seasons being part of your coaching. What do you have to say about Ed? Ed Fry's no longer with us, but he was such a big figure in IUP and a lot of people's lives. What impact did he have on you?
You know, I loved Ed. You know, I think the first couple of years I didn't really have much of a relationship with him, but I got to know him and love him. I mean, the way he cared and the energy he put into it, his sense of humor was incredible. Taking trips to national meets with Ed driving the vans, super guy, incredible.
What was your view of incoming freshmen? Did you look at incoming people as someone you could mentor or friend, or how do you view new arrivals once you were not the new guy?
That's a great question too, because they all come in, the same expectations, and some of them were very good, and some of them weren't. I don't know. I don't remember friending them at first, or mentoring them. I do remember a fellow named Jeff Tomachek. He was only there for one semester. Incredible talent. I got to spend a couple nights in hotels rooms with him at national meets. Tried to help him. He didn't stay at school.
Let's talk about school. How did you manage two-sport athlete and the academics?
When I wasn't running my first year and a half, I kind of lost my way. So when I had running, I could put everything together in a disciplined way. Not like I was an A student, but I felt like I was a B student, blessed with a very good memory. So yeah, I could memorize stuff. And that's a lot of what we did in college, was memorize stuff and pass tests. I'm not sure I put a lot into it. Might sound kind of weird, but my priority was always running ahead of school. I figured when I graduated, everything would work out and take care of itself based upon, effort and whatever.
I just want to talk about your relationship with Jim Wooding, if you don't mind. He was not a cross-country runner. He was not a distance runner, but he's your roommate and you became friends. What did you see in Jim Wooding?
You look at Jim and you don't especially see a great athlete, but he had to be the most talented athlete that I've ever met. Obviously an Olympian in the decathlon, and I think he missed the decathlon one year because we boycotted the previous Olympics. I'm not sure if he didn't have a chance at that one.
The 1980 games, when we boycotted the Russia games, that could have been him, but he went in 84.
That could have been him. Whatever Jim did. I remember I played a lot of basketball, pickup basketball. Whenever I could, I'd get Jim to play. We never lost. He was an incredible basketball player. I remember going to the pool. We'd sneak into the field house pool and no one was in there. And the guy off a diving board could do it's like world-class dives. It's almost like he could do anything he wanted to. Just an incredible athlete. We got to be pretty close. We were roommates that year, and then the following year, he convinced me to become a member of a fraternity. So I was in the same fraternity as Jim. We were roommates again at the fraternity.
Okay, what was your transition out of college in the 1970s, leaving IUP, and what happened to your athletic activities then, too?
When I left, there was really no jobs in the Northeast, bad recession around the country. So I went to Houston, worked in the oil industry. Always kept the dream alive of running. And I worked out. I either ran or played basketball every day, lifted weights, stayed in pretty good shape, ran 5K races, more for just staying in shape, I guess. And I remember a few years later going to a 10K in Dallas, one of those memorable moments where I think I'm competitive and there's little kids passing me at the 7-mile mark. So that was kind of my aha moment that maybe that's it for dreams or aspirations. Although, I kept running races and then ultimately did some triathlons later on when I was in my 30s and 40s.
I don't mean mental age in terms of development, but your mindset age as a competitor. When you were competing there, triathlon and the races when you realized I'm not able to train and stay at the highest level, what was your mindset compared to when you were winning races, high school, winning every race and becoming All-American, All-State in college? What was your mindset and self-expectations for those activities then?
I think in high school and college, when you had a race, I would really get worked out. You really get in a different state. I always think it was fear just that motivated me to run the way I did. After college, you didn't have that. So your mindset was more, you just get in the moment. I'm a plotter, putting one foot in front of the other. And so once I got in the event, I'm just trying to do the best I can. Looking for a competitive outlet, though, was something that was really interesting, is because that was our outlet to compete, running. And once that was taken away, played a lot of pickup basketball, for example, at YMCA's, and very competitive at that. Again, I can only jump about 2 inches, or I could then. I'm not much of a jumper, but that became an outlet. Then you proceed on to, I did golf as a competitive outlet, still want to play well and get trophies and stuff like that.
Across, let's say post high school, how rewarding is the final result as you go through basketball, accomplishing golf, achieving goals along the way? Were you still goal driven?
I think always goal driven, maybe less for the physical part and more just all around.
What I mean is that competitive part being an outlet. Competition, view it as a good thing, not necessarily worried about all the results, but competition being a drive. And at some point when you're not as competitive, how important is that as a driver to keep with things when the success level is not the same as it was?
I think ultimately that's what led me to stop running, is because I couldn't achieve the success. And that's why, basketball, I achieved this success, even though it's pickup basketball or golf. So certainly success breeds, your interest and your enthusiasm. And that decline in running probably was part of why I didn't do it. Although, continued to train well into my 50s, I suppose, in some part. I remember running with my daughter when she went out for cross country. She pulled away from me pretty good on a run. I said, "You just give me 2 weeks." No. Never could catch her.
Let's talk about your role running with your daughter. How much of a coach were you of her in her athletic activities?
I really wasn't much of a coach. I just tried to be, support, because she pitched in softball. So, I practiced a lot with her with softball. Running, I think she might have gone out and done it just for fun, to be in shape and the camaraderie. They had a massive girls team where she went to high school. So I didn't really give her a lot of guidance. She just did her thing.
That was a couple decades later, a different part of the country. But how do you think the sport changed from when you were first starting? What changes apart from better tracks and better shoes do you think happened?
It was an inferior sport when we did it, runners, in the 70s. There were no girls' teams running, but it was looked down upon, if you weren't football, baseball, or basketball. I remember the football coach in one of the races, cross-country race that I ran and I won. He stopped the football practice right in the middle of the course and had them all cheer me on.
Wow.
That was pretty cool, but it was a secondary, non-prestigious sport. And then with the success of American runners in the later 70s, 80s, it became something people wanted to do. It's changed a lot. And, I think the girls' team where my daughter went to high school probably had 50 runners on it. Yeah. We could scare together 10 for the boys' team, maybe. Back then.
Catching the fever in the early 70s, has track and field stayed a passion with you as a follower? You named off easily the super athletes for the U.S. and the world in the 70s. Have you kept attached to the sport?
No. I think back to Emil Zatopek and Lasse Viren, big fans of theirs, which were a little bit before my time, but the role models of what they did in the Olympics. So to watch guys like Prefontaine and those guys finally be competitive, that was awesome. And Dave Waddle in the half mile, I'd love to watch that race over and over again. Yeah. Pretty cool, but I don't. And I know a lot of my teammates still go to the trials and stuff like that to watch. I have not kept up with it. I think Mary Decker Slaney was the last person I know the name of.
What about your thinking back on it? If you're ever talking to a group or with your golf buddies, shooting the old times, do you talk about the running that you did in the 70s, high school and college career, with anyone ever?
Not very much, I suppose. I don't know how you bring it up. I think some of the guys I ran with, in high school, since I still go to high school reunions, so a couple of those guys, certainly a couple have passed on already, but in the two guys I ran with before my senior years that were 4 years younger than me, I keep in contact with them, and they both ended up going to Lehigh because their dads were teachers at Lehigh. We reminisce a little bit, like times we got on our bicycles and drove from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania to Seaside Heights, which was about 100 miles on back roads, and stayed at a hotel in Seaside Heights for a week. They just thought that was so cool. Probably pretty dangerous in retrospect that we did that. Reminisce about that. And, the summer season where we all went around and had fun and won all the races.
Let's go ahead and look back with the magic wand. Not that there's anything dissatisfying, but if you said, I'd do it different, what kind of things with hindsight do you say, this was a time where these things were possible or weren't possible, the 70s running and the opportunities it gave you then?
I'm not sure. The opportunities it gave me, it became a model for my life, I suppose, and how I chose to live my life. I'm not one to look back and have regrets about anything other than that mile example I gave earlier. I did my best. Maybe some points I was one of those people you were talking about with a previous guest that didn't apply myself. I certainly worked as hard as anybody, I certainly feel like I didn't have a lot of talent. I think sometimes talent can be a curse. So I felt like I had to work as hard as anybody. I have no regrets. I certainly loved every minute of it. Wouldn't change anything about it.
Great.
Met a lot of great people.
Let me ask you something controversial. Something that wasn't a part of running in the 70s, as far as I know, is widespread use of performance-enhancing drugs. And there's certainly no cross-gender issues. Now there's a lot of politics in sport. The change makes it a center stage sport. So there's drug testing. There's gender issues. What do you think of the state of track and field and running, and how are they going to handle those things in this much more complicated world of athletics there is now?
I'll go back in the 70s. If there were performance-enhancing drugs that people were taking, they never would have been caught because there was no testing. So there could have been things. I doubt it because technology hadn't advanced that far. I'm obviously not a proponent of any of that stuff. I suppose that back then, if someone had offered me something that would have made me magically a lot better, I would have considered it. In the gender testing, it's not that I don't want to talk about it. It's way out of my area of expertise of what I try to focus on. So I'll just let that be whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, great. Your sports now is mainly golf?
I tell you what, one of the things, yoga is, and it's funny, is when I was 40 years old, my wife took me on a little vacation trip to Sea Island, Georgia. I wandered into a yoga class at 7 in the morning, and it was with 10, we'll call them little old ladies, and me. And it was relatively embarrassing, humbling that they could do everything and I could do nothing. So that started a 25-year journey of becoming a yoga person, where now I just pretty much do it at home, but I went to classes for many, many years. And I almost can't start my day without 30 or 40 minutes of yoga, from obviously benefits for keeping our muscles stretched and such like that. Also the mental calming part of it. It was a competitive thing in those early years, is, hey, they can do that, and how come I can't do that? I remember telling one of the teachers, I've laid here on my stomach and tried to grab my back feet and lift my torso and my quads off the ground. I've laid here and done that for 30 straight days, and I can't move an inch. So finally, it was like magical that everything came up. It's a lifelong thing. You can do it. And it's the antithesis of competition is what it really is. You just put yourself in a stressful position and relax your way into it. That was a big part of the journey for me.
Things may have been different for a lot of us and a lot of our injuries if yoga had been part of the mindset for what the coaches encouraged in the 70s. When it certainly was not for most people.
Absolutely, because we were lucky if we stretched for 2 minutes and then we were off and running at full speed. It probably would have helped.
Let me see if I have this. You played Little League Baseball. Then you became a runner, and that was part of your identity and part of your long-term vision. Some point you became more basketball player. Some point you became golfer. And some point you became a yoga participant. Is that about the right track? Physical activity and mindset?
That is. And I don't run anymore, but I do walk 5 miles a day, not all at once necessarily. Maybe that's part of the leftover from the running thing. I just used to love to go run 8 or 10 miles. So maybe that walking at that time alone. I always tell people it's interesting. A sport like basketball, you're fully engaged and can't worry about your troubles and your issues while you're playing basketball. But when you run and you walk, your mind can grind all that time on whatever's going on in there. That's an important part of my life, is whether it's walking on the beach or just walking around the neighborhood.
Good sleep is a time where our subconscious or mind goes to work on some things, and that same thing, making time for that is probably a really healthy prescription. Unless you were at a school and the sport was a key part of that school, and there weren't very many of them, We didn't have trainers, didn't have recuperation, didn't have doctors and therapists for everybody. So injury treatment was a self-discovery journey.
Absolutely. We had ice and whirlpools, not necessarily one was the wrong thing to do, but we did it anyway because it felt good. But that was it. You were on your own.
What about nutrition? At what point did you change from a high school or college athlete that eats and drinks whatever you want all the time, you can perform at a high level, to being concerned about your nutrition, either for competition or just general health?
Good question. Also, I blessed with a fast metabolism, so I never really concerned myself with how much I ate or what I ate. When you get a little bit older, they start to measure certain things like cholesterol or blah, blah, blah. So you get a warning. But back then, we never did any of those things, so nobody knew, right? I'd say relatively recently, the last 10 years, not so much at any of my athletic career did I concern myself with what I ate because I never gained any weight.
It wasn't really on the radar. Eat to win was maybe not even in the 70s when it came out.
I don't remember that being a thing. Because we were burning so many calories, I think it was just eat as many calories as you could. It's changed a lot back then, carbohydrates. I lived on carbohydrates. I could eat cereal 3 times a day, that'd be fine, or pasta and stuff, and pizza for that matter. That's all we needed.
They were the food groups, yeah.
That was it.
And how do you sleep?
I've always been a good sleeper, anytime, anywhere. I mean, I could take a nap. I don't have to take a nap. I really enjoy sleeping. It usually takes me 10 seconds to fall asleep.
That's great. What about the toll of running starting 50 years ago? What toll did it take on your body and a lot of our colleagues? There's new hips, there's new knees, there's heart issues and everything.
Interestingly enough, I marvel at this. I have no joint pains. So knees, hips, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why I shouldn't for all the years that I did that. The only thing is atrial fibrillation, which started about 5 years ago, probably for me in and out. I attribute that to running, the level of craziness of training that we did from age 13 to, for me with basketball and stuff, to 35 at least. At that level, probably not the greatest thing for your heart. And even basketball players like Larry Bird, Jerry West have had issues with it. Nobody talks about it per se, but it is probably caused from the level that we worked there. And again, I say that with no regrets. I like to say my journey is my journey. You try to figure it out. Even what the doctors tell you, I'm sure there's a lot more to it, trying to understand what you can do about it, the best course of action for you. But everybody deals with their own health issues when we get to be this age.
We're at the age where some people have already gone on. Recently, we lost a member of IUP in the 1970s running, went on to run later, certainly with the marathon. Don Friedline. What do you remember about Donnie Friedline?
Great athlete, and I have to say, even a better person. Bigger than life person, his sense of humor, his dedication to running, his dedication to his studies. I always tell the story. We were supposed to go on a trip to Florida one Christmas, and the night before, I called him up and said, "You ready?" He said, "I'm not going." So we didn't get to do that trip. But if I remember correctly, we did a nice wildwood trip right before school started one year with some pretty fantastic memories with Bushy. Just great guy. And I talked to him recently. I gave him a call because he worked in the same industry I did. I even emailed people after he passed away. And I told the story. I used to run with him, and they said he was a character and everybody loved him.
Yeah. What did your teammates think of you?
You might have to ask them. I don't know what they thought. I hate to say this because you might have identified me in one of your previous podcasts, those people that partied pretty hard. Couldn't do it the night before a race, which was usually on Saturday. So Saturday night was usually a pretty big night for the partying. I'll tell you one thought that occurred to me, and it's about running. I remember when I won my first race in high school. So it was an away course. I won that race by a lot. And I think back that I won that race many thousands of times in my mind before I actually won that race. And that's the kind of thing it takes, I think, to be successful. At whatever level you're in, you have to put that type of effort into it. I remember many races like that. You had to think about it many times of how it was going to be done and actually get it done.
Do you think that was something everybody did?
No, I'd say not, but I could be wrong. I never had that discussion with anybody. Did you do it?
Yes, I did.
Even back when I was young, a lot of my role models, I just read books, whether it be Mickey Mantle or Ty Cobb, the success that those people achieved and just trying to learn how that was done. I've read a lot more books since I've graduated, continue to marvel at all the great stories out there. Into Thin Air, I think you introduced me to that John Krakauer book. Just marvel at the tenacity and what limits they'll take their body to is just absolutely amazing.
This is one of those what ifs. If that injury had been more significant, do you think anything would have changed in your life if running had been taken away from you right away when you got to college there and that had been over?
First of all, I'd say that I contemplated dropping out after the first year because that's how much I had lost my way when running was taken away. And again, back then, we think of orthopedic doctors. We didn't have orthopedic doctors. My knee hurts. I can't run because it hurts, blah, blah, blah. If it had been something more serious, maybe I'd still have a limp. I don't know. That would have made it different. I don't know in what ways. Because to me, it was kind of a coming full circle back to something that, again, was the thing that kept me on track for whatever I was trying to do.
When you look at what's happening now, there could be a whole meet where there's 3 or 4 high school kids going under 4-minute mile. What do you think of the progression of athletic achievement?
I have no problem with that. I mean, just go back to Roger Bannister we don't have the capability to break a 4-minute mile until he broke it. And then maybe it was an invisible barrier that a lot of people poured through immediately after that. My good time would have been 12:20 for 2.5 miles on a cross country course. The time goes by and people get better. Football players, are 150 pounds heavier and they're still just as fast.
Yeah. What about that barrier breaking? Is that something that happens outside of the world of athletics where a limit you saw, it took your eyes being opened by something other than your accomplishment to burst through a barrier you had set?
Pretty complex question.
It's the 4-minute mile question.
One of the ones today is Elon Musk. I mean, for goodness sakes, like him or not like him, he created a whole industry where the car industry which had all the tools to do it, couldn't do it. The iPhone came out in 2007. I think I got it in 2009. I said, for goodness sakes, Steve Jobs, you got a screen and you just move your finger around. How cool is that? Google, technology things. When we were growing up in the 70s, big change. There were no cell phones. So when we were out and about, we were not reachable. The technology change is accelerating. So that's the biggest thing that I see that's parallel.
Yeah, life-changing for all of society at that point. Let me just ask you about this podcast on the subject running in the 70s and on the subject people. Do you think there's value in it? And what would you like to hear? What kind of things would you like this podcast to explore with people?
I've listened to, I think, all the ones that you've had so far, and I really enjoy them because they kind of go wherever the person wants it to go. So they've all been very different. And I love that insight of how people thought about their running, how they look back of how the sport has changed. To me, it's fascinating because I think it's something that hasn't been explored. We went from a sport that was almost laughed at. There's a guy in his shorts running it out there in 30 degrees or something like that. A skinny guy, whatever the case may be. Yeah. To now it's a cool thing.
Maybe in the public psyche over 5 decades, the image of, certainly because of the rise of women's sports and a lot of other sports, the image of what an athlete looks like may have changed and expanded.
Because even back then, although I felt very positive about what I did relative to the studs on the basketball team or the wrestling team or the football team, it just, you felt inferior. They were the cool kids.
Mm-hmm. Didn't have this social acceptance where everybody's a runner. Yeah.
We were pioneers. I mean, there's no question. We were pioneers that for some accidental reason got into running. For whatever reason, the sport developed around us.
Okay, Andy, that was great stuff. Thank you for your time and sharing all your stories and thoughts and reflections. I'm sure a lot of your teammates and colleagues from both high school and university will enjoy hearing your reflections.
All right. I enjoyed it. More than you did, probably.
Any final thoughts?
I'll have to call you later.
All right.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.